Hi YouTube, how are you? Welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. Let's bring in our friends over on Twitch here. Start recording this baby. Everybody, welcome to Stratosphere Studio. I'm Bill Whittle, and we are with you on the 13th of May of 2024. Shut up, you idiot. Hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, so it's been just a quiet week here in Lake Wobegon. Not really too much to talk about. Natasha and I made a drive out to the desert a couple nights ago to try and see the aurora, which I think we were a night too late. I don't think it got all the way down to Los Angeles, but there were reports that auroras in North Texas, and some people said I thought I heard some people say in Florida, which is really pretty unusual. So, is that you on your T-shirt? No, it's not. It's Rod Serling, actually. It's the one and only Rod Serling. Submitted for your approval, Rod Serling. So I'm submitting this T-shirt for your approval. Yeah. Anyway, things are just kind of rolling along. And I don't really have a whole lot, I think, to get started on tonight, to be honest with you. That's a chance to go ahead and jump into the questions. I've been dealing with a real kind of an emotional deficit, just nothing but brain fog, and it's almost like inert, which I don't like at all, and I don't know what to do about that exactly, but we will try to figure out something. So I'm a little scattered tonight, and that's Frank Luke burnout. Yeah, that's probably what it is. It's what it feels like, to be honest with you. Ever since I finished that, it just In any event, that's why we have a comment section. So I do miss. I'm sorry I didn't get to see the Northern Lights, because there's a big solar storm, as you probably know, and they were spectacular. Bert sent me. Thank you very much for all the kind words about the brain fog and the lassitude. Bert sent me a picture. I've been in his house many times, and he said this is what it looked like last night. It's just the skies just lit up purple and green, and I've never seen them. I came close. I flew to Norway a couple years ago, and looking out the window, I could see just a little green smudge, just barely tell it was green, so it wasn't anything really, to write home about. But it's one of those things I've always wanted to see for 50 years now or something, and I just haven't had a chance. So there you go. Caliban Society said, "Did you see Michael Knowles brought on a gentleman talking about Google's Ledger? Are you talking about the Apple? I think it was Apple. Might have been Google, but the selfish ledger. Yeah, that's the most terrifying video on the internet." Hey, thank you very much for Walden 400 first time chat. Hey, born and raised in the Twilight Zone, Binghamton, New York. So glad to have found you. Thank you. Glad to find you here. I think probably I'll just go ahead and start doing questions and see what happens here. Because I'm just a little loopy today, which has been known to happen. I really need to get a lot more exercise too. I'm sure that's a significant amount of it. Member form. Come on, baby. Here we go. Stratopop questions for 5/13/24. Hey, that's today. Curated by Eric Blake again. Thank you, Eric. I'm very grateful for all of that. thank you for the kind words about the Daily Wire series, and I have I painted this wall black for the story mechanics, and it looks great. But then I had actually gotten for my wife for her painting, I got her some of this super black. It absorbs 99.4% of all the light that hits it, something like that. It just makes the wall disappear black. And I ordered it. They said it'd be here 3 days, and it's not here yet. It's been 10 at least, I would say. So I just wish I'd done a test there, so I kind of want to get that in so I can finish it up, but I don't have to check and see what those things are doing too. Yeah, I'm just basically just kind of today. Been known to happen. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got here. We'll just take a quick run through, shall we? We've got an Eric Blake, we got a Marusha Dark. We got an Eric Blake, we got a Janie Waterman, we got an Ian Nolan, a Marusha Dark. We got a Jaser McFarlane, such a cool name. I think we'll do all of them. I saw the word Silmarillion there, and that's going to be fun because I love that. I love that book. I like it much better than Lord of the Rings, actually. All right, so here we go with the topic starter, Eric Blake. Hey, Bill, since you recently brought up your set-in-stone guest for story mechanics, particularly David Zucker, might I make a couple recommendations for subject matter with him? Yes, and I'm going to have to remove Dick Rattan from my list of people who I wanted to speak to. That was kind of sad. First, the Scary Movie franchise. A lot of people forget how the Zuckers did those movies too. Second, An American Carol, which he directed. Just what on God's green earth was going through everybody's head in making that? I can tell you a little bit about An American Carol. American Carol was made, in what year was it? Because I remember I had a bunch of friends that were in it, and I remember seeing a little bit of it, and it wasn't his best work. 2008. Okay, so that movie was released in 2008, but it was written probably in 2006 or 7, and it was a. This is right when FOA got. It was when I got started in FOA anyway, right in there. So there were two things that were going on then. Barack Obama and that entire radical revolution was just on the horizon and coming fast. But mainly, we had been dealing with the Iraq War since 2003, and a number. It's hard to remember how many films were made back then about the troops in Iraq, and redacted and I've forgotten the name of half of these things, fortunately, because they're not really worth remembering. But they were all not pretty negative. They were really negative. A number of them had former servicemen who were in the movie and had to be in a movie or decided to be in a movie or whatever, that ended up making them look really bad, and we were all just kind of really down on that. It had been long enough from 9/11 so that people had kind of forgotten what the whole thing was about, and so that's, I think, what caused Dave to go and make American Carol. But yeah, it's a little cringy in parts. It's funny because I think that's really another example of what we've been talking about so many times here. That was a message film, and like they said, if you want to send a message, you should use Western Union. He had something to say, and a lot of us did. You have to understand that back during these days, we would be having meetings of this organization that Gary put together, and Gary Sinise, and on a weekly basis, I was generally doing 2 meetings a month. I hosted an awful lot of them, and we would see people come in, new members coming in every meeting, and we were getting one thing pretty much every single time, and that was people who, in show business, who were so embarrassed and ashamed of themselves because they didn't speak up for what they really believed, because it would cost them their job. I can't tell you how many times we heard of cases where producers would just come on the set and say, you know, I want to fire a Republican today. It's unbelievably hostile. But I mean, usually the most conservative people, the lower you go down on the totem pole, the more conservative you are. That's typical of what's happening in a larger case now. But we would have stuntmen come in, and stuntmen are genuinely tough guys. I mean, stuntmen are they're just a brand all to themselves, and we would get these guys come in, and some of them would get teary. You know, they'd be sitting about talk, or other actors, they'd be sitting in the makeup chair, and everybody's going on and on and on and on about how George Bush war for oil, and our soldiers are murderers and psychopaths and baby killers, right, Jim? And he would just look at his shoes and say, right, you know. It's a hard thing to understand if you haven't been in the middle of it, that kind of peer pressure, because it is your livelihood, and they're not shy about it. They wouldn't. I mean, they just simply did. They just blackballed hundreds of people, and I talked to most of them firsthand. So I think really what was going on there is, I think that Dave was trying to just make a statement, and do something where the jihadis were the bad guys. But I agree, it's not a great movie. Just parenthetically there in this YouTube comments, M. Nit says, "Hey Bill, what's next for What We Saw? I love watching you present these series. Thank you very much." I had heard we were supposed to shoot video for America's Forgotten Heroes, which, like the Cold War, had only been a audio podcast, and that's wonderful news for me because it's already written. I can do the on-camera stuff till the cows come home. It's free money as far as I'm concerned. But the thing that I've been pitching to them is I just want to do something called the Navy. I just really feel like there are just a lot of great stories to tell, and it doesn't seem to be generating a lot of interest, which I find to be a little sad. There is some interest in them. I might as well just come out and say this as plainly as I can here. So one thing that they definitely did want me to do was a series on conspiracy theories, and these kind of sort of debunking these things. Here's why the moon landing actually happened. Here's why 9/11 was committed by 19 members of Al Qaeda. And here's all these things. And I was reluctant to do it, and the reason I was reluctant to do it was because I could think of 5 or 6 that I wanted to address, and I know I couldn't think of a single person I know that didn't believe in at least one of them. And I didn't want to start, poking people in that regard. But there's something to be said for it. So, I would include the atomic bombs in that. It would be basically, no, here's why we dropped the atomic bombs, and here's why it was the right thing to do. This is why we proved that we landed on the moon. This is why 9/11 was not an inside job. I know this one generates so much controversy, and this is why I didn't want to do it. I am utterly convinced, based on a book called Case Closed, that John F. Kennedy was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone, and that the amount of information about Lee Harvey Oswald that is never talked about is beyond belief. I think it's an open and shut case. There's a great deal of misinformation about that one. And all of this stuff is about, weighing evidence. That's really what the show would be about, is how do you weigh evidence? How do you know things are true? Now, as it turns out, I said if I do that, I would like to do at least one episode, and maybe more than one, where I would say, now there are other so-called conspiracy theories for which there is actual genuine evidence that is not provably false, that there's a genuine case to be made. And a few of the ones that I could think of off the top of my head was, well, first of all, the whole COVID reaction. I think that's a great deal of the so-called conspiracy theories about COVID are true, and we knew it from the beginning. First and foremost of which was that it came from the Wuhan lab, and we did that. We knew that. We started doing the Chronosphere Lounge on March 18th, I want to say, or was it April 18th? March 18th, when they shut down the show, shut down everything, and within 3 days, I'd seen enough compelling evidence that I was sure it was from the lab. And so that'd be one where it's like, no, this is something that you really should ask some questions about. And some of the other ones that I think are at least open books in terms of not provably wrong. The whole business of the Federal Reserve is pretty dicey at best. The evidence for these global elites, I'll get to that, capital Greek. These evidence for these global elites forming an actual, world government in hiding, with the Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones and all of that stuff. I think that is some compelling evidence for that. I think there's overwhelming evidence that the 2020 election was clearly tampered with. And one that I had put to bed earlier, but I've read enough about it to make me reopen the case, so to speak, is the TWA Flight 800, which exploded shortly after takeoff from New York, I want to say, and it is that is starting to look a little. There's some fairly compelling evidence that was an accidental shoot down from naval exercises that were going on. And if that's the case, now I'm not saying that is the case, I'm just saying that evidence seems credible. But a lot of the evidence, when I first got involved with all this stuff, I read a book called Best Evidence about the Kennedy assassination. And it was a 400-page book. In that 400-page book, they probably spent 3 pages on Lee Harvey Oswald. The premise of Best Evidence was that Kennedy was shot from the front, but when he was on board Air Force One being taken back to, I guess it was back to Andrews, surgeons were operating in him on the back to reverse the trajectory of the bullets. And I thought, man, that's unbelievably compelling evidence. When you put down a number of data points, and somebody is approaching it kind of, from a sort of a virgin perspective where they don't know much about it, they're just reading these data points. It's easy to see that you can make a case from just about anything. You put enough dots on the table, and just start connecting them. You draw anything you want to. So the question really became and becomes, how do you determine what's true or what's not true, and what kind of evidence, what kind of weight do you give evidence to? And I was thinking that the only way I would do it, if I did do it, would be to say that this isn't. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. this is what convinced me about this. And the what the hell was it? It was just right on the tip of my tongue. It was another one of these. Gone. It'll come back. Okay, hang on a second. I got a little housekeeping I have to do here. Hang on one second. Sorry to interrupt the show. Just take a second. Just deal with this right off the bat. Okay, that was easy. Anyway, so that's that, Eric. And the other movies you mentioned, I thought were okay, but I didn't think they were up to Naked Gun standards. There are moments in Naked Gun that are just absolutely brilliant, just crazy good. Okay, where the heck did we go? Did I do that? No. Where'd I put my questions, man? Joe Biden pulled another one of the started a sentence. If we're going to get together and realize our vision, then we have to anyway. Trump is up and he's getting up higher every day. I'm telling you, man, this has to end. This really has to end. Okay. Yeah, and a lot of the and the UFO things. There's just so much of you can usually tell. I'll give you one example that was just real clear to me. Two examples. Once when I was talking with a guy about UFOs being alien craft, he showed me, what did he call those things? These alien creatures flying around, and they were like elongated, and they had like little wings on them or something. They're just flying through the frame like this. And I forget what he called them, but it was really, really impressive from what he was talking about. And it was just the slow motion of these things moving through there. And I said, "Can I see the original footage, please?" And he played the original footage, and it's just insects, big insects. It might have been like locusts or something like that. Rods. Thank you, rods. Yes, rods. Way to go, Sage Grouch. I can't believe you caught that. Yes, rods. So he's showing me about these rods, and they're these creatures, and I said, "Can I see it? Can I see the original footage?" And when you play the original footage in real time, it is absolutely just bugs flying around. If you take them frame by frame, the motion of the bug does a little bit of a smearing kind of thing there, and it just again and again and again. It's just dishonest. And there was another one I remember too. On the 9/11 conspiracy, there was a picture of a one, I think the bottom of a 767, and there was a glint at the bottom of the jet because it's polished aluminum, and a JPEG artifact was there, and they said this is a targeting pod. And I thought, okay, then let me see the footage. Let me see the video footage, because if it's a targeting pod, it won't be on just one frame. So there's one thing when people honestly think that there's a reason to doubt things. That's good. That kind of skepticism's good for society. But when you're knowingly lying about this kind of stuff just to make yourself think look smart, I find that to be pretty low. Tower 7. A lot of people saying there's no way to explain it. The World Trade Center fell on this building and cut a third of it away. and it burned for 5 hours, and it's like, oh, could not have possibly, happened. My favorite thing about the 9/11 thing is the controlled demolition argument, because if you've ever seen a documentary on how they do actual controlled demolitions of buildings, you know that it takes months of preparation. That they have to go in there with welding torches, and they have to cut holes in the key support beams, and they put shape charges in there that are going to blow them in a certain direction, and it takes, like I said, weeks or months. And when they're finally ready to go, there's something like 70 or 80 det cords coming out of the building, and then ching 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 off the flashes of light, flash 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 flash, and the World Trade Center is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could go into any one of those offices at any time, and nobody had removed the panels, nobody had put the det cord in, nobody had done any of that stuff. It's not like you just put a suitcase in there and it just blows up. So I did read a little bit about the construction of the World Trade Center, which is unusual. The Empire State Building got hit during World War II by a B-25 bomber, but the Empire State Building had its structural supports evenly spaced throughout the center of the building, and a B-17, essentially a hollow airplane flying at, I don't know, maybe 200 miles an hour, is an entirely different thing than having a jet coming in at 600 miles an hour. If you double the speed, you square the impact force, full of fuel. And the World Trade Center is unique in that it had these open floors with no vertical columns. So they had like a center steel structure, and then it went to the outside skin, which was also part of the skeleton of the building. That's how they got away from having internal columns. Instead of having the supports go all the way around down through the building, they put the spine of the building in the middle, built concrete floors all around, and then they had the outside be steel that was load-bearing steel. It wasn't just a facing; it was load-bearing steel. And you saw what happened when that stuff came down. You remember the first images from Ground Zero after the dust cleared, and you saw those sides of the Trade Center just like giant, scissors stuck in the ground like that. It was freaking horrifying. Yeah, that one doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. And furthermore, what bothers me about that is that you're basically letting the people that did this get away with murder. And I don't particularly like doing that, so there we go. Okay, let's see what else we got here. We got 2 super chats here. Lapco92, The Naked Gun is a great movie. I heard good things about 1, 2, 3 also. There's my pestering for the night. Thank you, Lapco. I wouldn't be complete. I'd start to get nervous if I didn't hear about it. As a B-25 Mitchell, I thought I said a B-25. If I said a B-17, it was definitely a B-25. And then from Darius Thurman, another super chat. Hi, I'm Darius from Jersey, long-time viewer from 2011. What do you think was the fatal flaw in the Middle East wars after 9/11? Yeah, I could tell you the answer to that. I think looking back on it, we lost the peace when we decided that to allow the Iraqi constitution to include Sharia law. I remember when they had that first election in Iraq, and I want to say it was 2004, 2005, and people coming out with their thumbs in ink, and it was really looking like, that might actually be on its way back to the kind of countries that they used to be. If you look at pictures of Beirut in the 1970s, especially if you look at pictures of Kabul, Afghanistan in the 1970s, you see girls in miniskirts walking down these avenues with these beautiful grass and all of these trees, and they've got travel posters, and they got airlines, and they got all that stuff. And it's hard to believe that Afghanistan used to be a pretty civilized, decent place. And then this radical Islam came along and turned everything to utter garbage. But when we I think that's when I remember when I first feeling like, well, then what's the point here? I still maintain the point of the Iraq War was that we killed anywhere between 40 to 80,000 Al Qaeda jihadis in the deserts of Iraq, and people never mention that. It's kind of a big deal in my opinion, considering how after 9/11 the entire Muslim world, it seemed, was just ready to go and join those guys up. I do remember reports coming from al-Zawahiri sending messages, who was in charge of AQI al-Qaeda in Iraq before he was introduced to a couple of 500-pound bombs. But he was basically sending messages to Osama bin Laden saying, send everybody you've got. Send everything you've got. We thought that these Americans were paper tigers and that you were, we'd be dealing with a bunch of liberals in hot tubs, and these Wu-Tang Clan Marine mofos are here, and they're kicking our asses. Radzilla says, anybody put up the free trial for the Daily Wire thing? I have not put that in place yet, and that's entirely my fault. I've been dealing with a lot of just really having a hard time focusing lately, which I'm working on. I was at the doctor's office today, as a matter of fact, so I'm going to run some blood tests and see if I can find out what's going on here. But what was before Afterburner? Before Afterburner was Eject, 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 which was written essays, so that was fun too. Okay, so that's one down. Marusha Dark. Topic: silent Star Wars. I like it when people come in, cut the guff. No more guff. Topic: silent Star Wars. Bill, I know we're all fans of the original Star Wars trilogy here. I have to say, I showed Natasha, to my utter amazement, had never seen Star Wars, so I showed it to her. I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and I was kind of shocked at how well that movie did not hold up. Maybe it's just me, but it anyway. But Star Wars is Star Wars. I know we're all fans of the original Star Wars trilogy here, so I thought I'd share an interesting discovery. Was recently watching this video talking about how George Lucas and John Williams originally conceived of Star Wars as a silent film, meaning de-emphasizing dialogue in favor of letting the action and the music carry emotions and transitions. That's interesting. I'd never heard that before. Turns out that there was at one time a genuinely silent film version of the trilogy put out with subtitles and no speaking parts. Who knew? Star Wars was also influenced by Japanese samurai films, among other things. Yeah, one of them was called the Secret Castle, or the something castle, where the plot is exactly the same. And apparently people have made Japanese dubbings of the movies as well, the prequels, in a sort of a Kurosawa style. That premise doesn't immediately sound like it should work, but apparently it holds up surprisingly well for what it is. Yeah, there's more coming here. Hidden Fortress. George Lucas is just famous for writing lines that no one can say, and Mark Hamill's constantly talking about the lines that Lucas would have written for him, and he just George Lucas is not a writer, and when you really get deep in the weeds about the original Star Wars and what he wanted, you realize that it's a fair. I think it's a fair statement to wonder how much of Star Wars actually came from George Lucas, because I don't know. I've never found him to be particularly brilliant. Steven Spielberg is a genius. He's a filmmaking genius. But I've always felt that Lucas just didn't seem to have a lot of starch under the collar. Anyway, continuing here. was wondering what you thought about this idea and whether that, among many other things, is part of the secret sauce missing from modern Star Wars films like the sequel trilogy, obvious woke nonsense aside. I'll tell you what's missing, Marusha. There's one thing missing from the modern Star Wars, and it's the fuel that powered Star Wars. It's the essence of Star Wars. The essence of Star Trek is hope and wonder. The essence of Star Wars is fun. It's fun, and it was always supposed to be fun. And there is no fun in anything after the Return of the Jedi. There's no fun at all. That's when they started taking it seriously. It's when people started. When Lucas started thinking, "My God, I've started a worldwide religion here." It was supposed to be fun. And name a Star Wars product that's come out since then that was fun. Fun till Uncle Owen takes the land speeder away, says Dave Big Booty. Yeah, but really, that's really it. It's just missing. There's no kicks, and that was the thing about Star Wars was you when you first saw it, you couldn't take it too seriously. And I thought that was crystal clear from the beginning. Here's something I did not know. Lapco92 says the term Jedi came from Jidaigeki, Japanese phrase meaning period drama. Okay. So I liked Rogue One too. I thought Rogue One was by far the best Star Wars that happened since the trilogy. I actually kind of loved Rogue One, but it's not fun. And I'm not saying it has to be completely lighthearted. Obviously, I mean there's some serious themes going on there, but ultimately, I mean when you first saw Yoda, for example, when you first saw him, he was like a little monkey. He was just a kook, he's digging through Luke's bag and tasting food, and he was playing Luke, obviously, but he was just kind of goofy. And when because you're going to try and go see Yoda, the great Jedi Master, and then when he reveals that it's actually him, then that's a nice piece of business. It's a nice twist. It's a lesson, a surprise, all that stuff. But I don't know. I liked them. That's a point James Blackhawk just made. You don't like the characters anymore. No, but I liked Harrison Ford, and I liked Mark Hamill, and I liked Carrie Fisher. And I liked Alec Guinness, and so I was rooting for him. I liked them. So many modern movies have protagonists who are just miserable individuals. I'm looking at you, Captain Marvel. Ugh. So if it were up to me to save Star Wars, that's what I would do. I would go right back to canon, and I would make it fun in the swashbuckling sense of fun. Okay. Eric Blake again. If I may, Bill, I must concur with Marisha's point about post-Mandalorian Star Wars. Before you're tempted to skip with sorry, I just don't care anymore. Recall, Bill, that's what the left wants. Our side to stop caring and give up. Bear with us. Okay, so here we go. We are in the Star Wars Mobius loop of the vessel that has only one side. Let's find out what we can do. As you may recall, I've laid out previous episode how Book of Boba Fett can best be summed up as Boba Fett as Curtis Sliwa. There's also Andor, which among many things is the beautifully Shakespearean "What is my sacrifice" monologue from Stellan Skarsgård, which I firmly believe may be remembered as one of the greatest moments in the entire franchise. Truth is, Bill, one of the good guys, Dave Filoni, co-creator of The Mandalorian and the guy who redeemed the prequel era with Clone Wars, has been step-by-step gaining power in Lucasfilm after the Gina Carano firing, which he and Jon Favreau, you recall, were against. And as he gains power, KK loses it, becoming more and more a figurehead monarch who just officially approves of whatever our guy wants and signs checks. Mind you, some of her stuff is already deep in production, see Acolyte, but expect that to end after that one season or whatever. Let me just stop there. There's more, and I'll get to more. But people have been talking about Kathleen Kennedy being out for, on the rocks and everything changing for 5 years now. And the damage is done. Um, I mean, the acolyte and I mean they're just appalling. Nobody wants to see this stuff. Nobody wants to see this stuff. Um, and I I don't know. I don't know. It just she is clearly destroying this on purpose. She is she has I single-handedly destroyed what was arguably the most successful entertainment IP in the history of the world. She personally destroyed it out of her own feminist butthurt kind of, "Oh, I'm not getting coffee for the men anymore. The future, the force is female," and okay, Kathleen, and I every time I see Ray Skywalker, just it's like Ray Skywalker is exactly like that character on Discovery, Michael, what's her name, Durham. Nothing interesting, just a complete plank of wood with Mary Sue Powers. And in order to raise their perceived value, you do this stolen valor kind of thing. Yeah, well, she was Spock's half sister, adopted sister. Really? Yep. Grew up with Spock. Probably taught Spock everything he knows. Wow. I did not know that Spock had grown up with Space Jesus. It's funny he never mentioned her in the 30 years that he was on screen prior to that, but that kind of thing is just cheating. Same thing with Ray Skywalker. It's like, oh, I've taken Luke's place, and in the final line of the final movie, I have taken his name as well. And I could see Kathleen Kennedy just weeping into her coffee with tears of delight, and thinking, all right, congratulations, you did it. You trashed it. What you didn't do, though, Kathleen, is you destroyed it, but you didn't turn it. You didn't make it work. The one thing that cheers me up sometimes when I see the destruction of all these properties with all this message being pumped into them is it's possible to imagine a world where it worked. I'm not saying it ever would have worked, but at least it's possible to, as a thought experiment. In other words, it's possible, theoretically possible, that Ray Skywalker action figures would have just flown off the shelves, and that there would have been just endless demand for the Last Jedi T-shirts and all the rest of it. So President-elect A1 Abrams. Bill, this is a critical question in the YouTube stream. Bill, how is Rey going through the hero's journey any different than Luke? It's fundamentally different than Luke because Rey's passage through the hero's journey is not an arc, it's a straight line. She doesn't have to suffer. She doesn't learn anything. She doesn't have to pay a price. She never fails. The reason that Luke's ultimate triumph is so important is because he tries to raise the X-Wing out of the swamp and he can't do it. He can't do it. And he can't do it because he doubts himself. And this is the essence of what makes any character work. They have to fail. They have to get their hands dirty. They have to go through their crisis. And when you see when you start with the original trilogy, for example, and then the final trilogy is essentially just the first movies told again. So let's take A New Hope and The Force Awakens. It's essentially the same story. But when you first meet Han Solo, you buy the fact that he's a good pilot because we've spent 15 minutes before we see him flying talking about what a good pilot he is. and listing concrete examples of things. Oh, did the Kessel run in this many parsecs and blah blah blah? And no, I'm talking about the imperial jobs. These big heavy. He talks like a smuggler and a pilot. So when you see Han Solo in behind the controls of the Falcon, you didn't get to see too much of it in the first movie, but in the second movie, I remember when he does that through the asteroid field thing, then just does that upside down loop, and it goes into the to the hole in the asteroid where the worm is. It's like, yeah, this guy's been flying this thing every day for 20 years. Rey has never been in an operational starship ever. She sits down and not only flies the thing, but flies it better than Han, because girls are better than boys. You see, girls do everything that men can do, but do it better. And this is the message that you're supposed to get, and nobody believed it. Nobody. Where did you learn how to fly like this? Well, I have the Force. So you didn't have to spend years and years, or risk getting executed by Boba Fett or anything. You just came in and did it, right? Yep. What about your lightsaber training? I mean, at the very least, we saw that Luke had to go dish, 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 with his blinders on. But Rey picks up a lightsaber for the first time and beats the Dark Lord of the Sith. Beats him because she's a girl boss and a strong, independent woman, and it's just utter garbage. They're so insecure, and they're trying so hard to send this message that they can't do it. They're not capable of doing it. They cannot write flaws in a character because they're the character. And by the way, if I understand correctly, that is the essence of where Mary Sue came from. The term comes from a piece of fan fiction that was done in between the original series Star Trek going off the air and the first movie during those dark years, which I remember very well. And there were all these fanzines out there, and and everybody was just starving for anything, had to do anything with Star Trek, or just starving. And this young woman wrote a piece of fan fiction about Ensign Mary Sue or whatever, who's more logical and smarter than Spock. She's more daring and courageous and clever than Kirk. She's more emotional than McCoy. She's a better engineer than Scotty. And it's just such a naked transposition of wish fulfillment, on the part of the author. It's like, I want to be good at all these things, and okay, fantastic, that's great. This is something you could do at at Comic-Con and when you get out there and cosplay, but. This is not. It's not drama, and nobody cares. And by the way, they're never really scared. I mean, Daisy Ridley occasionally has a kind of an expression, but never really scared, because of course girl bosses never get scared because they're warriors, obviously. But that's what makes characters so appealing. In the first movie, in the first Alien movie, Sigourney Weaver is freaking terrified, and Veronica Cartwright is, I think she's just the heart of that movie. She looks terrified every single second of that film, and that really sells it, That really sells it, because ultimately you're watching Alien, which is a great movie. It's a great, great, great movie. And the reason it's a great movie is because you're scared. You're scared because they're scared. That's what makes that film so terrifying. That, and the fact that, like Jaws, although apparently intentionally unlike Jaws. So, if for those of you who may be brand new here, when Steven Spielberg made Jaws, they had a mechanical shark, and which you saw in a couple of shots, and the mechanical shark was not only not very convincing, it was just looked dumb. The only time you really got a good look at the actual mechanical shark was when it was eating Quint at the when they sinks the the orca, but that shark was supposed to be everywhere, and they got it in the water, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So Spielberg has got his first big movie. It's a best-selling book. Jaws is the first modern film, by the way. Jaws is the first modern movie, and he and that's why Spielberg is really genuinely a genius at this. He had no shark. He had a movie about a shark, but he didn't have a shark. So he had to tap dance. He had to tap dance his way out of it, and he realized that I don't have a shark, so I have to do things to show the shark's presence without showing the shark. And whether he did it intentionally or not, I suspect he probably did not do it intentionally. But what ended up happening was you're much, much, much more afraid of things that you don't see than you are of things that you do see. Once you see the monster, it's a disappointment. I remember A Quiet Place was like, ooh, this is really scares the hell out of me, because you see these blurs, and this kid snatched up just these blurs. And then finally, this thing ends up in the in the basement, and opens up its head, and does all that, and it's like, okay, meh. I mean, it wasn't bad, but you don't show the monster, and that's what's really scary. And in Alien, you didn't see the alien until, I don't know if you ever really got probably the only time you got a clear view of the alien was when it was getting blown out the hatch of the Narcissus on the rescue pod, because it was just a shape, and it was just moving, and the chains were rattling, and the cat would look at it just, and when you would see actors of the quality of Yaphet Kotto and Sigourney Weaver, Veronica Cartwright, John Hurt, when you would see these excellent actors looking at something off camera with just absolute fear, it made you scared. And there's none of that in the Star Wars movies. There's no stakes. I mean, just take The Last Jedi, Harry Dean Stanton, yeah, right. Yeah, Harry Dean Stanton was great. Parker, Brett, Lambert, Dallas, Ripley, Kane, not Bishop. I almost said Bishop. I'm missing Ian. Was it Bishop? Ash. Yeah, Ash. Yeah, they were all great characters, and they were really, really, really fun to do. So I just loved it, and Star Wars has got nothing like that. Eric goes on to say, now KK is not being formally fired, just systematically depowered. Well, it's too late. It may not be what we want, but it's frankly what we need. Quite simply, barring a significant change in leadership, Disney was never going to fire its most prominent diversity icon, although Doomcock is an honorable man. But the total depowerment is a perfect way for us to win, albeit without the enemy openly admitting defeat. It's not a clean victory with total emotional satisfaction, but it's a victory nonetheless. And thus, Bill, like I said before, mostly dead means slightly alive, and before you're tempted to say irreparable, remember two words, Glacier Girl. Okay, that's a good call on the Glacier Girl thing, but restoration is a laborious process which mostly happens in the dark, and I'm not saying you couldn't save Star Wars or Star Trek for that matter. I'm just saying it would have to be. I don't know. I don't know how you scrape off. The thing about the Glacier Girl thing is, I don't know. It's a good analogy. It's a fair point, I guess. But I just, And there's only so many times. Here's the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek and Glacier Girl. Glacier Girl didn't poke me in the eye for 20 years. It didn't just constantly poke me in the eye and call me a racist for trying to restore the airplane. And so a lot of my antipathy towards the future of Star Wars and Disney is just plain anger at being blamed for the failures that they made. I resent it, is probably the best way to put it. So we'll see. There's that. Janie Waterman. Hello again. You signed off TSL not long ago, and I wanted to encourage you. I'm just one person, but because of the Cold War and Empire of Terror, I've been able to talk to others about the actual evil that communism is. You can tell they had no idea, and neither did I before learning it from you, and now they know too. The truth is spreading, and the work you're doing is mattering. Well, gosh, Janie, that was crazy sweet of you to say. That means so much to me. A very, very, very nice compliment, and I certainly need it. So, wow. Thanks. That's one of the most gracious things I think I've ever heard. That's very, very sweet. Yeah, you want to nuke it from orbit, so you can be sure. And that's another reason, by the way. My favorite movie is Aliens. It's my favorite film ever, and it turns out it's a lot of people's favorite films. But the thing that Aliens got right, and what Aliens got right was what Alien got right, and that is you had a cast full of people who you cared about because they were actual characters. They were actual, believable, dimensional characters. And, yeah. Bill Paxton just stole that movie. Just took it like he he caught the kickoff with his left, foot just like a half an inch inside the end zone and just ran it for, 110 yards. I mean, it's just an incredible performance. And Paxton doesn't work unless the other ones work. Paxton doesn't work without Vasquez, and Vasquez doesn't work without Hicks, and none of them work without Gorman, and you've got a real genuine villain there, who's interesting because he doesn't look like the devil, he seems like a really nice guy, Burke, but no, he's going to kill them all because he's greedy. And yeah, Paul Reiser, he was terrific. The whole cast was great, and the woman who played Newt, I mean, that was the only thing she ever did. She utterly retired. She said her life in high school was miserable. So did the kid who played Anakin Skywalker in the Phantom Menace. No, he went off the deep end. He did not have fun at all. But the young woman who played Newt said that all throughout her high school, she would say, she'd just get this all the time. She would say, I've forgotten what her name is. I want to say Melissa or something. Hey, Melissa, you want to come out you want to go to the movies? Yeah, it sounds like fun. Let's go see a movie. And then they would say, movies, Carrie Hen, thanks. Yeah, Carrie, you want to go see a movie? Yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's go see a movie. And then the friends would say, movies play at night, usually, mostly. That mostly. Just kept feeding her that line back. I thought she was great. And when Hudson, when she's saying, when Ripley's saying, Hudson, calm down, this girl has survived here for 4 months, on her own, and then, fine, man, why don't you put her in charge? I was over the moon. I loved it. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Janie. It was very nice of you. Very, very nice indeed. Thank you. Ian Nolan, Bill, for aerospace startups trying to out SpaceX, check out Rocket Lab. They're 3D printing rocket motors, and Stoke Space, they're building their rocket as an array of tiny rockets that turns the entire capsule into an aerospike. Sounds pretty cool. me see what they got here. Just have just a super quick peek because that sounds unlocking the space economy. These guys are and I saw one on what's the name of this company? I did a right angle on Anduril, and then this company Hermes something other. They're looking to build a Mach 5 hypersonic vehicle with a single engine that'll do subsonic turbojet, transonic ramjet, and then a hypersonic scramjet. So that's pretty cool. I'm just trying to get a look at. Oh yeah, wow. I like their motto: any orbit, any time. All right, man. These are the guys that are going to get us there. This is really exciting. I just wish this stuff could have started in 1980. Stoke Space announces $100 million in new investment. That's a good number. Yeah, this is sustainable future. Is that a flying vehicle? I'm sorry to be looking at a website when you guys are. Yeah, all right. So yeah, it's these little tiny startups, and they're all American companies, by the way. These are the guys that are going to do it. And I'm looking at these pictures of these engineers here, and yeah, they're all millennials, pretty much. See a couple of Gen Xers in there, a couple of boomers in the back, sipping their Metamucil and leaning on their walkers. But yeah, go kids, go, man! We're 100% behind you. Go for it. Do it. So I'll look at that some more. Thanks. That looks really cool. And I'll check out Rocket. I'll check out. I've heard of Rocket Lab, but I'll check them out too. Back to Marusha Dark again. Hormones and personality. Well, definitely something I could use to hear. Something interesting I recently learned from listening to a combination of Jordan Peterson and Dr. K of Healthy Gamer. Here's some links. Context. Vasopressin is a hormone released during times of stress and is tied to mate guarding and territorial aggression. It's correlated with male bonding as opposed to oxytocin, which is tied to empathy and used in female bonding, particularly between mother and child. So, literally, men bond over danger and women bond over safety on average. Sounds reasonable. John Eden, I don't know what to do with you. Thank you. Another $99 super chat. My first squadron, we got so much mileage from Paxton's lines, never got old. Thank you very much for that tremendous generosity. Yeah, Paxton, game over, man. I've got a shirt with him on the back, and he's got this expression. It says game over, man. Maybe you haven't been keeping up with current events, pal, but we just got our asses kicked back here. But he comes through in the end, He delivers. Similarly, one of the roles of estrogen is to increase awareness of one's own internal state. That's interesting, meaning thoughts and feelings, while testosterone increases awareness of external states, so threat detection and situational awareness. That's so interesting. Let me just stop there before I forget. I mentioned that Natasha and I went out to try and see the aurora a couple nights ago. We went up to Llano, up in the Mojave Desert, where I learned to fly gliders, and I hadn't been there for years. And I hadn't been there at nighttime for 20 years, 30 maybe. So I knew it was a real dark place. So we go out there to the desert in Palmdale, and we're getting further and further out there, and there's been a lot more development, so it's not a really dark sky. But we're up on this out-of-the-way road, and my spidey sense just started tingling, really tingling, and long way up this single lane, country road that led to the glider port. I knew it would be a good dark place, and I knew where it was. And I looked down at the way down there at the end of the street, mile or 2 miles away is a intersection, is traffic light there that wasn't there when I was here last. And this car comes up, and I can just see these headlights, and the headlights pull into this little residential area, kind of stops, then it backs up a little bit, then it starts coming up the road towards us. Then as it gets about, I don't know, 20 yards away, it starts slowing down. I'm thinking, all right, this is almost certainly somebody who's, lives in the neighborhood, and they're concerned about these two people standing beside this little Buick Encore on this side of the road. But the guy driving it didn't say anything and just kept on going past and went up the hill and disappeared. And we're sitting there looking at the stars for a while. And the next thing I know, he comes back down again and did the same thing, went all the way down to the bottom. And then it looked like he was coming back for a third time. And I said, honey, we're getting out of here. Palmdale is the worst place I ever lived. And desert people are strange. When I started flying in gliders, if we went too long downwind, we'd overfly some guy's property, and he used to like to come out and shoot at us with a rifle. And this is before cell phones and cameras were everywhere, so it took quite a while for us to get enough evidence to get this guy, arrested for that. But, there's just a lot of strange stuff out there. And Natasha couldn't understand it. I wasn't strapped. If I was strapped, I'd be feeling much better. I was just like, this whole thing feels really, really wrong to me. And all the way back, she thought I was Methdale. Yeah, all the way back, she thought I was kind of imagining it. And I said, honey, you know how I'll be in the house and I'll say, can you tell me where that lint brush is? I've looked everywhere. And she said, it's right there. And I was like, oh, yeah, so it is. It's right there. That's generally speaking, that's what women are good at. And I said, honey, I'm not expecting you to be able to have detected it, but I detected it. And I'm not making it up. It was dicey, and I did not like it there. And she thought I was just completely overreacting to it, but I don't think I was. In any event, just to back up because it's interesting, similarly, one of the roles of estrogen is to increase awareness of one's own internal state, meaning thoughts and feelings, and presumably pregnancy as well, while testosterone increases awareness of external states, so threat detection and situational awareness. I'm very good with threat detection and situational awareness. A downstream consequence of this is that women tend to be higher in trait agreeableness and neuroticism, while men have something called normative male alexithymia, which is a fancy way of saying men are often emotionally blind, for better or worse. I completely agree with all of this. This is the fundamentals of biology, folks. Just follow the science. All of these hormones exist in everyone, male or female, in different amounts, yes. So genetic variability and environmental factors, both chemical and social, can lead to a wide range of possible outcomes in any individual, yes. For instance, Jordan Peterson talks about being a biological male with a predominantly feminine temperament whose wife is a biological female with an overall masculine temperament. I completely agree with all of this too. I think one problem we see in social discourse is people talking at each other extreme. What I just outlined about humans is true at a macro level across normal distribution, and we can use them to say things that are generally true for most people, but that same doesn't necessarily apply to every last individual within that range. Anytime you're arguing the exception, you've lost the argument. It's simultaneously the case that outliers are real and exist while also not necessarily being statistically relevant, depending on where we draw the lines. Question: how can we learn to better integrate population level trends with a respect and concern for individual rights and differences, since both are true, important, and necessary in their own way, but each can also be taken too far and misapplied? Wow. Okay. So first of all, yes, the hormones are an enormous part of society and civilization. I maintain that this society is way too feminized, way too feminized. Now, I'd rather live in an overly feminized society like this one than an overly masculinized society like Nazi Germany, but it is nothing like in balance. And you see the symptoms of this everywhere. I mean, just take like MGTOW, right? Men going their own way. I'd never heard of such a thing until 3 years ago or something. And then I heard the term and I thought, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Men are going their own way, you know? Thank you, Sad Wings, Raging for that Taffy 3 jar. But the thing that I find interesting about men going their own way is that you never hear about women going their own way because they can't. You know, if you look at the things that men are interested in, it's a wide variety of things. But if you look at the things that women are mostly interested in, it's men and how to attract them. And I don't think there's any question as a generalization that women are much more focused on men than men are on women. And I think this bothers them enormously. And so when the feminist movement tried to tell women that that they can have all of the things that a man can have, and that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, well, there's an awful lot of bicyclist fish out there, and they are not happy. I think women are much more unhappy than men, and we find that, was it 70% of divorces, or 70 or pushing 80, are instigated by the woman. And when you come to college-educated people, it's 90% of the divorces are women leaving men. Wow. Mark Davis, I have to just stop for a second. Empire of Terror is the best documentary I've ever seen. I wish everyone would watch it, especially college students. Thank you so much. That means the world to me. Means the world to me. Thank you very much. And obviously, this is all generalization, but men going their own way basically says, hey, you know what? We'll just swipe right a lot on Tinder, and we'll get our Tuesday night hookup. We'll go, Netflix and chill, and then she can go home. I'm feeling good for the night. I'm going to call my buddies and we'll play video games till 4 a.m. Women go home from this encounter and wonder why their lives are so vacant. That generally doesn't happen with men. They're much simpler, and I love, like, for instance, just imagine a comedian's doing a set, and the comedian says, well, women are much smarter than men, and you'll hear all the women in the crowd will go, woo. It's like, it's insecure much. I think that there's, somebody mentioned environmental poisoning, and I think there's a lot of truth to this. We know, I think there's a relatively solid basis to say that that the plastics in the bottled water, like this, produce a lot more estrogen. There's no question that, statistically speaking, testosterone levels are something like half of what they were in the 50s or 60s. And Bean's great, by the way. Thank you, Steve Whoop. He turned out he did not have, he had an enlarged liver, but it wasn't cancerous, so he's doing great. And I just, I feel sorry for them, but it's not easy because some of them are just so toxic. And when you see these young women on, like, the Whatever podcast, and you just realize, these young women, first of all, they all think they're 10s. And even the ones that, if you wanted to say that you get some of these young women, Gen Z women, and let's say you found one that was really genuinely hot, like really smoking hot, and they think they're gonna marry these high status males, but it's like you can't take somebody like that to a dinner party, and you sure as hell can't take them on a round the world tour. You got to be able to talk to this person. They're dumb as dirt, and they're really toxic, and they can't understand why so many men are going overseas to find their wives. I mean, I didn't set out to do that, but that's what happened to me. Because Natasha's just a real traditional kind of a woman, and and I loved it the second I saw her. I just loved it. Um, and but this is the thing, they think they are so sexualized, these young women, and they're so shallow, and they're so slutty, and they don't realize that 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 the kind of men that they think they can attract, the six pack, the six figures, and the 6 foot or higher, those guys would certainly use you for for a fun Saturday night or something, but there's just no way. I would want to get on. I would want to get on the whatever podcast and say something to the effect of, "Listen, ladies, just let me just tell you the way things are, okay? I've been to some high level events in my life. I've been to any number of events with top celebrities. I've been to some very, very powerful political meetings, and I've moved in some big circles. And I can tell you that I have never once in any of those encounters, never once seen a visible tattoo on a woman. Never. Never. And this idea that this guy who's got everything everything under control, and he's just gonna he can hire somebody like you. It's much cheaper. Just hire you. The thing that I think that I admire the most, the kind of relationships I admire the most, I really like the ones where many women believe that they can. Battle Smurf says many women believe they can beat the wall because they're special. Well, they're all special. Everybody's special, which means nobody's special. It's already causing enormous societal unraveling because of the neurosis thing. I mean, the whole Karen phenomenon is women being forced to deal with things that they're not really equipped to deal with. This really should be something that their husband should be dealing with, and they don't have women don't have the inhibition on outlandish behavior that men have, because men understand that if you turn into too much of a jackass, you're going to end up with a split lip. They just don't stop, and it's really dangerous. I've been saying this for 10 years, that the reason I get so torqued about these female warriors and I mean, Natalie Portman holding a hammer that weighs more than she does, with CG muscles on her arm, she's Thor now, or a Thor like individual. Young women are seeing this and they're believing it. Young men are believing it too. And so in the real world, if things start going south, I think the men are just going to stand back and say, go out there and kick their asses, ladies. And I'm seeing much more female fighting in the real world. Just anytime there's a fight now, it seems to be women. And the guys are doing, honey, you don't need to back up, and just take it easy, baby. Don't. And these roles are completely reversed. And I don't know. It's just clearly not working, and they're miserable. This certainly the social justice warrior crowd and all the Palestine protesters and all those folks, I don't think they've ever had a happy day in their lives. How can you be happy when there's so much injustice in the world, How can you possibly take a moment to have fun when there's genocide in Gaza and the planet's dying and corporate greed is, it just never ends. They're so miserable. They're just so miserable. And it's not fair to them. It really isn't fair. But there you go. There are people like Riley Gaines and was it, I can't remember, I think it was Vanessa Williams, basically fully out in front of this idea. It's like there's no competition between the two. You can't compare the two. But so it's satisfying to me to watch a group of 55, 60-year-old men who played, neighborhood soccer 22 years ago, beating the U.S. women's soccer team 12-0. It's satisfying because I don't buy the premise, and I think it's a dangerous premise, and I like seeing reality introduce itself into the equation. Yeah, Theta Grunberg, Greta Thunberg is. I remember when I first really got the vibe for her, and my first thought was, I can only imagine how disappointed she is going to be when she dies of old age and everything is just fine. That's going to be really heartbreaking for her, when she's in her 80s and 90s and everything's pretty much just fine. If I see one more of these planet is dying things, I'm going to lose my mind. Planet's in great shape. Planet's never been better certainly since the industrial age. The planet is fantastic. Kaladin Stockley's on a roll. Greta, brave, strong, so brave. Yes, stunning and brave. How dare you? How dare you, you little pipsqueak? Dante 2K says, even Greta's cats will not mourn her. Yeah, that's where you're going to end up being. And this is one thing I've seen from a number of these body cam things, and not body cam things, just a bunch of these, wall videos, and Kevin Samuelson, and you see these women saying, well, I make $300,000 a year, and I've got a brand new Mercedes, and I've got a brand new townhouse, and I fully own it. And he just says, we don't care. We don't care about that. That's not what we're interested in. What? No, we don't. We're not interested. That doesn't impress us. It's not what we're looking for. Anyway, we've been down that road before. Interesting point about the hormones, though, and I'd never heard of vasopressin before. I like the expression is tied to it released during times of stress and is tied to mate guarding and territorial expression. In other words, protecting your female and your kids, and maintaining your territory because that's where your food comes from. So, you never know. Moving on. Jazer McFarlane. Bill, thank you for everything you do. Thank you. I'm getting so many lovely compliments tonight. Honestly, really, it just makes my whole day. Thank you very much. The hunt for Gollum makes me terrified for the Lord of the Rings franchise. Well, Rings of Power pretty much showed me what they could do with that. Don't get me wrong, I love Peter Jackson. I have complete confidence that he will make something fantastic to look at and watch, and he'll be true to the source material, at least better than anyone else besides you, of course. Thank you. The Hunt for Gollum in the source material is a few pages at best, so they'll probably make a trilogy out of it then. I can't imagine why this would make a feature when you can have the entire Silmarillion with bigger stories like Beren and Luthien. Listen, the Silmarillion, I've read the Silmarillion 4 or 5 times. The Silmarillion is a book that Tolkien had been writing pretty much his entire life, but really mostly after Lord of the Rings, if I understand correctly. And it takes place in the First Age, and then the Second Age. So the Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age. And the Silmarillion makes Lord of the Rings look like a comic book. It is so unbelievably deep. Just the creation myth and the gods alone, Iluvatar and Manwë and it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. And the elves are created, and the elves live for thousands of years under the stars because the sun and the moon haven't been created yet. And that alone is just so poetic and just so wild. To think that this entire race spent, thousands of years just with starlight and nothing else. Um, and and then you get these heroes in this giant ongoing battle with Morgoth, and Morgoth is, I mean, Sauron is his coffee assistant. Morgoth is like he is a Mayan. He's not even a Mayan. He's a level above that. He is the embodiment of evil, and Sauron is his secretary, and it's just so amazing. The whole first age story is amazing. The second age story, which I think they tried to cover on Rings of Power, with Numenor and the kingdom of men and the island and the decay over the course of generations, and just how incredibly appropriate that is for our times. That this this land was gifted to mankind, this island called Numenor, as a gift, and that people had long lives and great health, and they were it was given to them directly from the god, and the only limitation on it was they could sail from Numenor back to Middle Earth as much as they wanted to. Numenor would be west of Middle Earth, so they could sail east all they wanted to, but they could not sail west out of sight of land. They could not sail west out of the sight of land, because if they kept going west, then they would come to the land of the elves, and that's where the immortals are, and that's not for mankind, and you can't go there. And when this gift was first given to them, and the humans are just as happy as they can be, and they've got these incredible trading fleets, and they're strong and they're powerful. And as things go on and on and on, and as society begins to decay and unwind, they get more and more envious and more petty, and finally comes to the point, it's like, well, who are they to tell us that we can't sail out of sight of the, we're powerful now, we can do anything we want to, and how come the elves have immortality and we don't? And just all this ingratitude and arrogance and pride. It's a mind-bending story, and the entire first, essentially the huge majority of the Silmarillion is the elves going to war against a god, and this belief that they could win, just the arrogance of that. But that's what they do. They go to war against a god, and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I think it's a rights issue, because the Silmarillion is it's a bunch of short stories and a bunch of individual little like nuggets that his son basically stitched together into something that's kind of like a narrative, but with a little bit of organization and stuff. Just the tale of Huron and all of it. It's just fantastic. It's fantastic. So, there you go. It was just amazing. So it's great. I feel like a franchise on this. I feel like a franchise on this magnitude. The only next step is the Silmarillion, done like Lord of the Rings, not The Hobbit with a bunch of CG, and that's what killed The Hobbit, was the CG, and certainly not like Rings of Power, that's unrecognizable from the source material. On one hand, if I got something like Rogue One, the movie that all Star Wars fans didn't know they wanted, amen, I would be blown away happy. On the other hand, if they make Lord of the Rings into the Fast and the Furious franchise, I'm going to cry. Yeah. When you take something like Lord of the Rings franchise and open it up to other films, how do you tap into the story the size of the Silmarillion and not destroy it like Star Wars? How would you break it up and write it? Well, I would give it to Peter Jackson, because that's 20 years ago now, and The Hobbit was 3 movies, Lord Bios. It was enough to make 1 movie, but they made it into 3. Um, uh, so the thing that Peter Jackson said from the beginning was, openly said in interviews, he said, look, we're doing this movie to bring Tolkien's vision to the screen. Our political opinions and our interpretation of current events is not relevant to this. It's not about what I think, it's about what Tolkien thinks. And he was so true to that vision. He's just so true to it. And when you read the books and you realize what Peter Jackson cut out of the movies, you don't miss anything that he cut out. I don't miss Tom Bombadil at all. And so you got to give it to somebody who loves and respects the work. That's really it. You got to give it to a fan. This is the thing I like so much about Henry Cavill. I'm not going to do that because why? Because it's not The Witcher. I love The Witcher, and I'm happy and delighted to be playing The Witcher, and this isn't The Witcher, so I'm not doing it. Good for you, man. That's the kind of thing where you should just get a statue made out of you. Yeah, you got to care about the material. How would you break it up and write it? I would. Now, Silmarillion, that could actually be. Certainly could be a trilogy, and I suspect if you were to include the Second Age, you could have 3 trilogies out of that. 2 trilogies, I think I would. I don't know. There's not quite as much material in the Second Age with Numenor as there was in the First Age, but so many of those stories, the Black Sword, and just I just somebody needs to do it because there are moments in that. What was the name of that elf? Guller Gag something or other. Glorfindel? The Glorfindel? Something like that. There's a number of paintings of it. You've got this elf warrior with a shield and a sword, and he's fighting Morgoth, and he comes up to Morgoth's ankle. But he's standing there, He's standing there fighting him. And it's just so epic. It's just tremendous. Yes, the Roger M just says the Aliens documentary pre-orders tonight. Yeah, he's made a documentary about Glorfindel. Yeah, and I just think the whole thing is just utterly fantastic, and I really would like to see it. Donde 2K says any Lord of the Rings movie worth its lembas needs to be on the big screen. I could not agree more. Or Fingolfin, was it Fingolfin? Yeah, I don't remember. Feanor, I remember. And Galadriel was there, and Galadriel was important. It's just Galadriel wasn't riding a white horse and slaying everything, because that's what they think power is. That's an interesting. I could just close on this. We're talking about this feminism thing before. If you look at Galadriel in Lord of the Rings, she's arguably the most powerful creature in the entire trilogy, but she is about as feminine as it gets, and she's got this calm, and the idea of taking somebody with that much power and charisma and reach, and having her strap on armor and a sword and go hacking orcs up, it's just stupid. It's stupid. Galadriel Thornburg. Yeah, exactly. That's who that was. And I'd forgotten how bad Rings of Power was, but it was unbelievable. And wasn't it like $1 billion or something like that? Iluvatar stole Glorfindel's thunder. Damn her. Yeah, and I've forgotten the names of the so. I think Manwë was the god of the sky, right? He's not a Luvatar, but he's like the head of the gods on the earth, and the sea god was, and there was a sea god, and there was an under the earth god, and I've forgotten their names, but they were just fantastic, fantastic, um, and so many great stories. Here's your chat before you wrap up. It's a bit of a white pill for you. Thank you. I'm sorry I missed it. I will do that right now. Thank you for catching me on it. Olmo and Manwë, yes, Olmo. Uh, is it Logan Darklighter? The ruin of the franchise was an end to the goal, the message. All the woke have done is teach us how to hate them and thus reject the message. And the woke cultists, the message was all that mattered to them, so they did not win. Yes. Nobody wants their message. Nobody wants what they're selling. And that's why they have to, they're like parasite wasps. They take their larva and inject this political philosophical larva into these host organisms like Star Trek and Star Wars just to get it past the guards, because nobody wants this stuff, because it's junk, it's rubbish, and it's anti-human. It's not just inhuman, anti-human. I don't know if I just don't know what caused me to think of this, but I guess it's this whole woke thing. I am curious to know if these Palestinian protests are going to, in any significant way, change the way that American Jews vote, because if it doesn't, then nothing will. I know a lot of my Jewish friends are just shocked to their core about this. And, of course, my Jewish friends are conservative and they vote conservatives. But honestly, if this doesn't wake them up, I don't know what will. Bill Maher said that there was at one of these campus protests, both the Palestinian protesters and then the conservatives that came up to counter-protest, both of them started chanting "F Joe Biden." Both sides were chanting that, and that's not good news for Joe Biden. Yeah, exactly. Caledon Society says, if not this, then what? This ought to scare American Jews. This ought to scare them more than October 7th scared them. I mean, October 7th horrified them and shocked them, but this would scare me if I saw this going on. And I think that Donald Trump is going to take a significant part of the black vote, because I think if he gets out there, if he gets in front of this, if he just gets in front of it, and just see, Donald Trump doesn't have to fake it. The idea of Mitt Romney going to a African church in the heart of downtown Atlanta is he just never do it, but Trump would, and Trump would be accepted there, because whatever you think about Trump, he's authentic. You may not like him and you may find him vulgar and crass and all the rest of it, but he's not pretending to be something that he's not. He's not like Hillary Clinton, who's talking about, she's on some black radio interview show and she's talking about she doesn't go anywhere without a bottle of hot sauce in her purse. That kind of condescending, I don't know. I just think Donald Trump should just basically make a point of going out to black Americans saying, can you imagine anything worse than what you've got right now? Yeah. Roadrunner says if Trump does too well, then 800 million Americans will vote for Biden. We'll see. We'll be better prepared, but we'll see. And it's only 5 months away now or something. So we'll see. Yeah, Andrew DeLay says Trump genuinely likes working class people, and it shows. Yeah, the people that can't stand him are these elitist snobs, Anyway, Now I finished the show just like Joe Biden. Yeah. Anyway, what what a what a leader. I really do wonder what deep history, 200 relatively deep history, 200 years from now, what they're going to be saying about this guy. So anyway, Bill, did you know that Bernard Hill passed away last week? I did not know that. R.I.P. Theoden King, and R.I.P. Captain Smith too. He goes now to his fathers, in whose mighty the hall of his fathers, in whose mighty company he shall no longer feel ashamed. As Findy says, Biden will still be alive in 200 years. Yeah, refurbish his tin hull. Yeah, and Sad Wings Ratings would just say, how do you like the cities that the Democrats have given you for 100 years? If the Democrats don't get more than 85% of the black vote, they never win again, ever. So, that is a consummation devoutly to be wished. I caught a little bit of King Lear on Netflix with Anthony Hopkins, and he's a fantastic actor. I never really appreciated Shakespeare until relatively recently. Now I just soak it up. It's archaic English, obviously, but when it's delivered well, with intent, you get the context of it. And Anthony Hopkins is just like an electrical wire that's come down, like some power main that's just sparking around all over the place, and just anything he touches just goes up in smoke and flames. He's just terrific, and it's fun seeing him with Emma Thompson again, because they were so good in Remains of the Day, and there you go. Well, I'm sorry to hear about Bernard Hill. He was a fine actor, and he really made Theoden King really made him work. So I've not seen Denzel in Macbeth, but Lear. Some of the curses he lays on his daughters, I mean, they're just like, holy cow. And Emma Thompson, when Anthony Hopkins is just laying these curses on her, curses, just unbelievably vicious, such visually clear curses on her, and you can just see it's like she's getting punched in the stomach. She's terrific. I just really like her. Dave Big Booty says Susan Blakeline also died, who was the first victim in Jaws. I heard that too, I think. Okay, well, anyway, I think you should never ever, that's one thing you cannot do on stage, ladies and gentlemen, on stage or on camera, and that is you can never yawn. I think I'm probably done for the night. So the show's made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, for we are completely, eternally grateful for, and I'm just dreadfully sorry about my sluggishness lately. I'm working real hard on getting some of that steam back up, and I'm waiting for my super black paint, which is really something, because I painted the wall flat black, and it's pretty good, but when you put the super black over flat black, it's like somebody cut a hole in the wall. So we'll see. Okay, so that'll do it. We'll say goodbye to our YouTube friends here first, I guess, tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, YouTube, and we will see you here Thursday for your Stratosphere Lounge. Hooray!